Hi, I'm Beth Graves, and thank you for joining us on the Circus Arts Spotlight. Each week, we'll shine the spotlight on the people, programs, and events of the Circus Arts Conservatory. In addition to professional and student youth performances, we'll explore incredible outreach programs and learn how the circus arts impact so many aspects of life. For more information on today's topic, or anything circus arts related, please go to our website, circusarts.org. Now, let's get started.
In today's edition of Circus Arts Spotlight, we're going to be speaking with SASA ARMOR. With a name like SASA, you know she comes from a family of performers, circus performers, that is. We've spoken with SASA before and thought she had so much more to say that we decided to speak with her again today. So we're going to talk to SASA about her family experience of traveling with the circus and performing and all the different acts she was in and how she finally decided to settle in Sarasota, where she found her niche working with me here at the Circus Arts Conservatory. Hi, SASA.
How are you, Beth?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
All right.
So, and some of these questions I actually asked Kelly, who we previously interviewed, but they're so interesting and they're almost universal questions, and everybody's going to have a different answer.
Absolutely.
So, you, growing up, lived in a circus world that really does not exist anymore. You want to tell us about that, please?
Well, I mean, the circus world that I grew up in was, I wouldn't change anything about it. It was a great way to grow up. It was very familial, of course, very cocoonish almost. All kinds of different cultures, of course, from all different places. Most of them had been in circus their entire lives and were generational, as I was. I'm a fifth generation. But some people, like my dad, were first generation in his family. And it just was it was a wonderful way to grow up because apart from the traveling, which is just a never-ending place to learn. I mean, it's just amazing what you learn about not just people, but just cultures and diversity, et cetera, just from traveling with different cultures and also in different parts of the country and, in fact, the world. I think that it may be the same for people that are traveling in the business today, but, of course, the business has changed, like with the invention of, like, Cirque du Soleil. It's really changed kind of the face of circus. Like, circus has been, there's now a lot more choreography. There's a lot more, it's more theatrical, I would say. Instead of, when I was growing up, all of our personalities were very theatrical, but the show was the show. It was pretty traditional.
There's more stories. Yeah. Like, thanks to Cirque du Soleil, there's sometimes stories involved and themes. Oh, yeah,
absolutely. And just, you can't grow up like that, traveling, moving frequently without having, you have stories that you don't even realize are stories till you start saying, oh, yeah, I remember when I was in Seattle and, we followed Bob Dylan into that building and he was doing this and that, and then people go, really? And you're like, well, yeah.
Did you follow Bob Dylan into a building?
No, we followed the Eagles. We followed Joe Cocker. There was actually, and years ago, there was a rock and roll circus. We worked halftime for the Rolling Stones. That was crazy. We worked for the Pope, John Paul. That was really amazing, actually. It was really a different kind of thing, and I got to speak with him for a minute, and he asked me, he actually gave me a rosary, and he just asked me what my take was on American teenagers, quote unquote, because that was, I think, back in 1980 when we were actually in Europe for about a year and a half at that time. So I mean, and the Three Stooges, not to follow the Pope with the Three Stooges, but I mean, we did. We worked with the Three Stooges and, Little Joe from Bonanza. He was a really good guy. We worked with him many times.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of people like that, and just, they're all show people.
Right. So cool. When you say you traveled, how did you travel? Were you like on a train like Ringling, or were you on a motor vehicle?
Yeah, no, we had all private RVs. Okay. Yeah, and the way we traveled, actually, we were kind of a specialty act. My family act was flying trapeze. So we worked maybe 23, maybe 24 weeks a year. and the rest of the time we spent here in Sarasota rehearsing and getting prepared for the next season.
Right.
But we would hit mostly major cities. Like, I only performed in a tent, I think, once in my life. Mostly I performed in buildings, big buildings.
Yeah.
Maple Leaf Gardens, the Boston Gardens, things like that.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, we would join shows that were traveling around as a season altogether to just kind of beef up the program when they would hit the big cities. So we traveled in, we always had some kind of a rigging truck or trailer, and then we had our trailers usually.
Right.
Sometimes we had motorhomes, sometimes trailers, but because, none of them last that long when you're traveling like that on the road. So, but that's how we traveled.
Yeah, and so who traveled with you? Like, I know you went with your parents. Do you have any siblings? Did you have extended family that went with you?
I did. I had a brother who's no longer with us. My older brother, he was 3 years older than I, and we used to actually drive behind my parents in the car.
Okay.
And my parents would be in either the motorhome or the car and trailer or whatever they had there. Yeah. And then usually we had somebody that worked for us that was our catcher. And, of course, they had their own unit, their truck and their trailer. And so we were that small caravan. Like two trucks and trailers and a car.
Yeah. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. It was fun.
So,
it was fun.
And did you start traveling like that when you were little?
Yeah. I was born on the road. I mean, I was born, for instance, in San Jose, California, and I've never been there. So I don't even know what it's like. But I was born there when my parents were on the Ringling Show, and I know nothing about it. So there's that. I've been living in Sarasota since probably I was 3 years old.
Okay.
Or, when we weren't on the road, I was living
like
here.
your home base.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is home. I've always considered this home. Yeah.
So does any of your extended family perform? Or
yes,
do they?
most all of it, those that are still young enough to be performing, I mean, which isn't saying a lot because they, performers perform way beyond what you think they would perform.
Right.
I remember my mom, the last time she performed, she was, I think, 44 years old, and she was 6 months pregnant. And
oh, my gosh.
And then she didn't perform after that anymore. But, I mean, I just remember her, now I think back, having had 2 children of my own outside of the business, and I think, oh, yeah, I remember her, like, hitting the net, and doing these things, and I was thinking, that's really kind of something,
Yeah.
But it just kind of didn't occur at the time, and it's just what she did, and then she quit. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
6 months, and she quit, and she did never perform again, actually, because I was there, and, we just, that was it for her. She was done.
Yeah.
She didn't want to perform anymore, so.
And what about your grandparents?
My grandparents on my mother's side, again, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather was a Christiani, which is a huge circus family. They brought the first circus ever to the state of Alaska.
Oh.
They were a huge performing family that John Ringling brought over from Italy in the 1940s. There were 10 surviving children. My mother's father was the eldest, and they came to this country and were on the Ringling Show for years, and then they were on another show or two, and then they ended up opening their own circus, and they did very, very well. So I have a bazillion cousins and, fourth cousins, and those are the ones that would still be performing and that are still out there. On my father's side, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, had a PhD in religion, and so very, very different. So he followed that path, and my dad was born in Santa Monica, California. We grew up in Beverly Hills, and so this was a big departure, from his family tree, of course, but he was made for show business, so he never looked back.
So how did you meet your mother?
Well, my mother, of course, grew up in the business. She's fourth generation, and she was out in Los Angeles. My father at the time, my dad grew up on Muscle Beach, basically, and then he became a stuntman. He worked in some films, 80 Days Around the World, and some just different things doing stunts. And then he kind of naturally hooked up with circus people because back then there were a lot more circus people doing stunt work. And there actually still is, but it was just a natural kind of meeting. And, he knew somebody that knew my mom, and they sort of met, and that was it. I mean, they were married. My dad passed in 2010, but they were married, I think, 60 years at the time he passed,
So, and did he become a circus performer?
Oh, yeah. He was
doing trapeze?
Yes, he did flying trapeze, and he was, in fact, inducted into the Circus Ring of Fame in 2017. And he was just an absolutely beautiful performer. Yeah, he really, really was. And very, very acrobatically inclined. He did everything, but then when he found flying trapeze, that was his niche.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
I think it's so interesting, the stories that we've heard here about the people that were circus people that meet and fall in love with people that are not circus people, and the people that are not circus people become performers.
Yeah.
Like Dolly Jacobs, you know, her father Lou and her mother Jean. Jean was a model. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, she's a circus performer. She's a showgirl.
Exactly.
And it was a different time, but
but it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think that, and I know she was a model, but I have found over the years, because I know, like, I don't know, just people that I've known that end up marrying actors, or like for a long time when we were in Los Angeles, and I was very little, but I remember it vividly because, and I don't know if you'll remember Ricky Nelson and Ozzie and Harry. Okay, well, Ricky Nelson, when I was very little, I probably was like 4 years old, he gave me one of those tinfoil rings or whatever and told me he was going to marry me when I grew up. He was actually dating my cousin, but who was a woman, but she was from, the family's so big that I had cousins when I was 4 that were already 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were dating very seriously, and he was the nicest guy. And that whole family, Ozzie and Harriet, the Nelsons, they were just such nice people.
Yeah.
And it's just, show people are just kind of universal like that.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I've always really loved, one of the things, and I'm really going off, digressing, but as a circus performer, at least, like when you'd walk out of the ring, there would always be people there, and you'd do your autographs, and everybody would come up and talk to you and everything. But the minute you get dressed and go out on the street,
like nobody knows
you, and you're not dealing with all of that. Like they had to deal with so much.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. I mean, that part of it wasn't fun. I remember working with Kenny Rogers, and he told me, because we had our RV parked on the infield. We were working like on this, like the Shreveport Fair, I think it was, and it was. He said, I so badly want to come out and watch you perform, but he said, every time I come out, everybody starts looking at me, and I just don't want to do that to you. It's not considerate. So he said, I'm looking out my RV window and watching you and applauding. I said, well, thanks very much. And we all barbecued together, and just really decent people.
Yeah.
Just really, down-to-earth people.
Yeah.
That just like to, let their hair down, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to just ask you how the circus lifestyle shaped you as a person, but you've sort of gotten into that a little bit, but is there anything you want to add about how it made you who you are today?
I think the things that I'm really grateful for growing up in show business is, and I think I told you this before, it just taught me a tolerance for things that I might not otherwise have had, because I never realized, being in show business, that there were so many opinions about people's private lives and their preferences and this and that. And in show business, it's not really about that. People kind of take you as you come.
Right. And
there are certain things that, are expected of you as a human being, and if you deliver those, everybody's fine, But I think what it taught me is tolerance. It taught me, I'm pretty gregarious. I'm not a shrinking violet by any means. I think that also comes from show business. And just the things I've seen and the experiences I've had that I don't think I would have otherwise had.
Yeah.
Had I been in one place my entire life.
So when and why did you stop performing?
Okay, so my father and I were performing in 1978. We were doing a benefit at the Catholic Church. Benefit meaning it was a benefit for the church, but we were being paid. Anyway, long story short, it was a different kind of an act for us. We've been doing it about 6 months, but it was a motorcycle on a wooden track, and my dad would drive the motorcycle around, and I would hang on a trapeze on the other side. Well, something happened. We'll never know exactly what, but his side broke when he was in midair, and he fell 60 feet to the cement. Yes, and he wasn't expected to make it, but he did, because he had so much good muscle that they couldn't believe that he survived a 60-foot fall.
Right.
But after that, I performed for a little while, but my heart just wasn't in it